Good evening, everybody, and welcome to this evening's Cabinet meeting. Can I start by reading out the appropriate notices? So there's a fire evacuation procedures. There are no fire alarms scheduled for this evening. So therefore, if the fire alarm sounds, please evacuate the building immediately. The fire exit is located at the side of the room. Exit through reception and meet in the War Memorial Park. The meeting is being webcast live on the internet and is available on YouTube to view after the meeting. In terms of the microphones, in order that we can all be heard clearly and that the webcast is clear, let's ensure we use the microphones and don't move our seats, and then we're on the camera as well. And in terms of mobile phones, please switch them off or turn them to silent. Thank you, everybody. First item on the agenda is apologies for absence, and I only have one apology for absence this evening, and that's Councillor Laura James. Do I have any declarations of interest this evening? No. Okay, there are no urgent matters this evening. So moving on to item 4 on the agenda, we have the minutes of the meeting held on the 10th of October. Are you happy that I sign the minutes as a true record of the meeting? That's agreed. I will sign them as such. Moving on to our first substantive item this evening is item 5, the draft proposals for the 24-25 budget and revised MTFS 24-25 to 27-28. And can I invite Councillor Gavin James to introduce the papers?
Thank you, Paul. This is the revenue budget. It's important to say that the capital budget does end up in the same place in February in full council, but it takes a very scenic route to get there. It goes on a different journey, but it will arrive in the same place. So this is dealing with our day-to-day expenditure. The main purpose of this draft budget is so the public have an opportunity to be consulted upon it. So the budget we are presenting, our sort of draft budget we are presenting, is a balanced budget. It means we're balanced for the next 2 years. Obviously, the MTFS is the basis on which the budget is built. So we inherited the medium-term financial strategy for this year and turned it into our budget by adding our priorities. And in fact, we've taken out some bits that were already in there. So I'll run through the headlines of it. Obviously, as a council, we're not immune from inflation. There's higher wages. Our fuel is costing more. There's also a lot of uncertainty around government funding, which we face. Things could change come December, possibly in 2 weeks' time with the Chancellor's autumn statement. This means we have to be very careful with how we spend money. We can't do everything, and we have to make sure we spend well, which is why this features a number of priorities that we've put in. The headline priority, of course, is cleaner streets. It's clearly come up as a priority since the administration was formed. There's in excess of £500,000 going into better ground maintenance and street care. We're also putting extra money into our play areas and parks to improve them and improve the maintenance of them as well. Within this budget as well as a recognition that housing is a real challenge for our residents, and so there's going to be support put in, more resources put into helping people navigate the bidding system and how to register for housing, as well as working closely with our housing associations in order to improve the supply and deliver more truly affordable housing for our residents. And those are the sort of the big budget items. Obviously, throughout all of that, there is a green streak that runs through it. Biodiversity is very important to us, so we're going to spend some money on truly understanding the biodiversity of the borough and how we enhance and improve it and how we certainly don't make sure it's damaged. We've also got work going underway to look at some of our property to really make sure we're exhausting every piece of roof for solar panels that we can to make sure that we charge towards net zero and green the borough as much as we can. Obviously, as I say, we inherited. The budget was built on the foundations of the medium-term financial strategy we inherited, and also there were some things within it that conflicted with our priorities, which we've taken out. We've restored the council tax reduction scheme for those on the lowest incomes in the borough that was set to be removed. We've also cancelled the increase in bulky waste collection whilst we find a fairer way of funding that service. And also, as we know, it's not actually just down to the council to provide services. Community groups, voluntary groups play a really important role. And so we've cancelled the proposed cut to the grant funding to those organisations so that they can continue to serve people in the borough. All of that does cost money, unfortunately. So there is a proposal to increase council tax by what will work out to be 10 pence a week per household, roughly 10 pence a week per household. In terms of other fees and charges, they're mostly going up at a rate much, much lower than inflation and trying to reflect the costs in those cases. What we really need is people to actually look at this and consider whether or not we've got the right priorities. It's the resident opportunity to have their say on the draft proposals we're putting forward. The important thing is that all of that leaves us with a balanced budget, which by law we have to present a balanced budget. We're also looking at our medium-term financial strategy, are in a balanced position for next year. There is a deficit in future years, but of course much of the medium-term financial strategy is based on forecasts and projections, and just like a weather forecast, we know what it's like tomorrow. It's very hard to predict what's going to be in a month's time. So some of those, over time, hopefully those gaps will close. But we're always mindful that we must spend every taxpayer's penny wisely and must always look for, can we do it better? Can we do it more efficiently? So we are confident that we're in a strong financial position to make sure that we can continue to balance budgets without making any extreme cuts to services. And that's the presentation. In terms of the recommendation to Cabinet, obviously one, the current forecast outturn position is detailed in section 5. It's a minimal outturn at the moment. It's £200,000 positive position. Note the medium-term financial strategy position set out, and say that's balanced budget for the next 2 years with some gap in the years coming up, but that's a standard position. The consultation will run from, if Cabinet approves this, it will run until the 3rd of January, which seems a strange date, so I'll just say it's going to run throughout now until and throughout December. And then it does also go to scrutiny committee on the 18th of November, I believe. Can't remember the exact date now, we'll check that. Goes to there as well, and again eventually comes back for a vote in February for Cabinet, and then on to full council as a proposal. So I'm asking Cabinet tonight to approve the draft and let it go for consultation, and that concludes the 5 recommendations.
Thank you, Gary. Colleagues, would anybody like to contribute to the debate? Kerry.
I've just got 2 points I want to quickly have a look at. I'm really pleased that we're supporting the events programme. It's very successful. It's free entertainment for our residents. Also, it helps drive footfall to the top of town and supports the local businesses there. Secondly, another great thing we're doing is installing LED floodlighting. We've done that at Down Grange. It saves us £20,000 annually, and also helps us on our journey to reach net zero. We're also doing that at some of our tennis courts, so that's a couple of things just to mention.
Thank you, Kerry. John.
I'd just like to commend the position on grant schemes. The grant schemes are the lifeblood for so many important organisations out in the community. They're really what Basingstoke tick. So I'm just very pleased to support that. Thank you.
Thank you, John. Annalise.
I just want to thank the co-leader. I think this is excellent, and also I'm extremely proud of the amendments that we've made too, in terms of our improving our offer, in terms of our statutory obligations, the cleaner streets, the play areas. Councillor Laura James has worked really, really hard to make sure that helping our residents with regards to the housing, which is, as Councillor Gavin James, is a major challenge. So I'm really proud that we're helping those who most need it and improving those areas which needed most care. And I'm also really excited about the focus on supporting our biodiversity team. These are all things that are close to all of our hearts and to our residents. So thank you very much.
Okay, colleagues, anybody else? Okay. I just think this is a reflection of what we've been about since being in control for the last 5 months. This budget reflects a tremendous amount of work from our officers, and I'd like to thank our officer team for supporting us in bringing this budget proposals forward. Just think about what we've managed to achieve in 5 months. We have put frontline services back to where we want them to be in terms of investment directly in staff and recruitment. It's supporting all the work that was already going on, tremendous amount of work that was already going on by tremendous staff doing a great job for us. And we've now put the best part of £750,000 into that area with support for not only staff but equipment that goes with it to increase the standards that we all want to see and support those standards in all that we want to see. So investment in those frontline services is one of the very first things we decided to do. We said we were committed to play areas. Well, we put the money where our mouth is in terms of supporting the play area scheme and supporting what we want to achieve with our play areas. rightly so, Councillor James rightly points out what we've achieved or want to achieve in affordable housing. And that's been a massive, through our policies, through our direction of travel over the past few months, putting all those key planks of policy in place. Well, this budget underpins that with investment in staff that will help us deliver on that affordable housing agenda. Think about biodiversity. We're now working on our biodiversity strategy. Everything that we said we would do around the ecological emergency we're beginning to bring through, which is really successful. We've got a very important meeting next week when we start to talk about Many Down and other proposals, but this budget underpins everything we've said about delivering for our residents, and I'm really pleased to see it. And on top of all of that, with the help of our officers, we've managed to balance the budget again for the third year of the MTFs. We have made it absolutely clear of our commitment to use the resources wisely, but actually invest and not be afraid of investing where it's right to do so. So I think as a cabinet, we're showing our mettle in terms of what we mean by putting investment into frontline services, delivering for our residents, and listening. So the next stage of this budget set of proposals is to listen, and I really do commend Councillor James and officers for all the work that's gone on to make this happen. I really do. And thank you very much in terms of giving us a tremendous budget to propose this evening. So colleagues, if there is nothing more that we need to say this evening, I've got the recommendations in front of us, and if we're happy to go through them and agree them, recommendation 1 is to note the 23-24 current year forecast outturn position as detailed in section 5 of the report. Are we approved of that? Do we agree? We're asked to note the revised medium-term financial strategy position as set out in section 8 of the report and the risks and sensitivities associated with the forecast and the contingency plans set out in section 18. Do we agree? Do we agree? We're asked to note the consultation will run for 7 weeks during November and December 23 as detailed in the outline timetable. We agreed. Agreed. We're asked to approve the budget proposals for consultation as detailed in sections 9 to 14 of the Equalities Impact Assessments as detailed in Appendix 2. Do we agree? We agree. And then we note that this update has showed a balanced budget for 24-25 and 25-26 with a residual budget gap in future years that will need addressing following any of the updates to central government's funding from the provisions of local government finance settlement to come later this year. And we do note those settlements will come halfway through this process, but that's the normal way of government dealing with us. But nonetheless, we will get those later in the year. Do we agree that item 5 of the recommendation? Noted. Okay. Technically noted. Technically noted. Okay, colleagues, thank you very much for that. Thank you, Gavin, for introducing the paper. It's appreciated. Colleagues, next item on our agenda this evening is item 6, the customer experience strategy. A very important part of the framework of how this council operates, and I'm really pleased to introduce the paper this evening. What it clearly sets out is how this council approaches our response to residents, our customers, and how we work with people, and we say we work with people. This strategy is designed to set out the standards, the principles by which the organisation will work and work to. It's very clear, and in proposing it to you this evening, it sets out our focus on people and just how we are focused on our residents and how actually, whether it's in person, which we are absolutely focused on, the fact that we provide that service in person, we recognise the digital experience that people also enjoy from the authority, and it's important that we balance all of that out. It's how we test ourselves on these matters as well. It sets out how we're going to test ourselves and how we accept that challenge as being something that's positive. And it's always something that we should be open and transparent about in the sense that we can always do better. This is a learning exercise. We learn how to be better in working and engaging with our residents, and this strategy details how we want to do that. And above all, it just talks about the pride we have in our officers and how they work with residents and what we can do that our residents can have pride in us and as authority, and how we want to make sure that their experience is the very best that it can be. So I'd like to thank the officer team for creating the strategy and bringing it forward. And I would ask you this evening if you have any comments on the strategy before we move to the recommendations. Does anybody have anything else they'd like to say on this particular paper before us this evening? Okay, then the recommendation in front of us is to recommend that we consider the comments made by the Scrutiny Committee on the 21st of March in section 3 of the report, and I can say that the comments made by scrutiny have been taken on board by the Cabinet, but also by our officers in reworking the strategy to reflect the Scrutiny Committee's debate on that evening. It's important that we listen and that we take on board those points. And then the second recommendation is that we adopt the strategy, the customer experience strategy, as attached to the paper on Appendix 1. So if I have your agreement, can we adopt the strategy as appended? Brilliant, thank you very much. Okay, colleagues, the final actual paper this evening is another important paper because of how it affects our residents. And I'll introduce this paper on behalf of Councillor James, who has given her apologies this evening. So this paper relates to the public protection orders and dog fouling, and it is an important paper to consider this evening. Again, thank you to the officers for bringing forward what's in front of us. So the report recommends that the borough-wide public protection order relating to dog fouling is extended for a further 3 years. That we do so because it will enable us to retain the powers to be used as and when dog owners fail to clean up after their dogs, when it fails. The overwhelming number of dog owners, and it's really important to state this, act totally responsibly. But as is the case, behaviour and attitudes of an absolute minority, and it is an absolute minority, do have knock-on effects to others. So think about the actual impact of this, whether it's walking around the places we live or where our children play in the parks and open spaces. It is absolutely critical that they are clear and they are clean, and they should be. And our officers and our protection team, our CSPO team, do a really great job of making sure that is the case. But we shouldn't have to worry about this issue when we are walking through our open spaces and parks, particularly where people fail to pick up from their dogs. And so it's right that we have the powers to do something about it, which is exactly what this protection order seeks to do. So it's not only highly unpleasant, it's also that has a clear health issue, and we shouldn't underestimate those health issues that are faced. So the powers, they're not only hold irresponsible people to account, but they are also there to promote the responsible behaviour of others, and we really do welcome dog owners and pet owners being responsible in that regard. So we encourage residents to report problems, to inform us of what needs to be done to keep the play areas and open spaces clean, and this particular protection order seeks to do that by extending the proposal for the next 3 years. Colleagues, do you have anything to say on this? Are you happy for me to read the recommendation? Any other comments? Councillor, keep it.
So I'd just like to thank Councillor Laura James for bringing this to the Cabinet, and as you said, it's an incredibly important priority for us. And as we know from the 2020 public consultation, the residents specifically said in the survey that they like clean streets, clean parks and open spaces. And as we've demonstrated, and as you, the leader and the co-leader, have demonstrated in the previous papers, we're listening. And this demonstrates further how much we intend to make this administration a case of not only listening to the priorities of our residents, but making sure that we fulfil their wishes.
Thank you, Councillor Cubitt. So the recommendation before us, colleagues, this evening is to delegate to the Head of Law and Governance in consultation with the Head of Environment and Community Services to make amendments to the PSPO in light of having considered the consultation responses, as Councillor Cubitt quite rightly points, to extend the Basingstoke and Dean Borough Council dog fouling public space protection orders 2020 for a period of a further 3 years. Do we agree to those recommendations? Agreed. Thank you very much, colleagues. That's a good set of decisions so far this evening. In terms of the remaining of the agenda, there are no else on the agenda, so therefore I will call the meeting to a close at 6:49. Thank you very much indeed.